Welcome to Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. My name is Amber Ireland, and I'm here with my co-host, Jill Bucaro. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Guided by Third Wheel. Today, Amber and I decided to talk about rest. I feel like I should give a disclaimer because there might not be a worse person in the world to give advice on resting than me, Jill Bucaro. But I think it's an important topic. Amber and I were talking a little bit before this, just our family of origin stories about rest, the anxiety we get when our bodies are telling us it's time to rest, when we feel like we deserve rest, all of those types of things. So I think today will be a good day to unpack some of that, to maybe deconstruct some of those old stories, to think about how do we give ourselves the permission to rest when our body is telling us it's time to rest, reflect on our resting or lack thereof, and hopefully some of it resonates with you guys.
Yep.
So Amber, talk to me about rest. How you thought about rest before, how you try to think about rest now. Have you become a successful rester?
No. No.
Nope.
The hard answer to that is no. I do think I'm better than I used to be. I do have the ability to shift my mindset around rest that I did not realize was so profound in my life before. Like now I can see it, and so I very quickly try to pivot, but all of those old stories are still in there. I mean, they are like deep in there. Yep. And anytime that I want to take a nap or I want to take a pause and do something just for myself, I often find that I am putting that off or finding other things to do that are quote unquote productive, that someone else would say were productive. Sure. I think that a lot of the stuff that I do for self-care and rest when I do it is productive, but it takes me a minute to get there and recognize it as such because the old stories say that is not productive. Growing up, I know exactly where it came from because I've tried to unpack this for myself because until you get to the place where you understand what the old story is, it's really hard to go back and disprove it, dispel it. So when I was younger, in my teenage years, because I don't particularly remember this when I was like a small child, elementary school, that type of thing. But as I became a teenager in those tween years where you're moody and you're more tired and more things are going on and you're starting to have some autonomy, and so that's stressful. I would go to school and I would come home, and when I would get home, all I wanted to do was have a snack, sit on the couch, and then I would fall asleep, right? To take a little nap or something. And inevitably, if anyone else was home, I would get what are you doing sleeping? If you've got time to sleep, you can get up and clean your room, or you can go do your homework, or you can go and do the dishes, or you need to do this, which sent the message that sleeping during the day when you're tired is not okay. It's lazy. You should be doing more productive things with your time. Sleep is not a productive thing. And I carried that with me, till now. I still have it. But looking back now, I realize in those years, I was getting up early in the morning to go to school, right? Going to school all day, dealing with the challenges that you deal with as a teenager, just emotionally having to navigate a day at school and peers and social cliques and all of that kind of crap. Going through the classes, then doing homework at night.
Yeah. All the changes your body's going through.
And then all of your body's still growing, right? So you need additional rest. So it was normal that I was tired. Like I wasn't a lazy person. I was just a teenager. And then having my own kids, they did the same thing. They get to those teenage years and you're like, why are they always sleeping, taking a nap? They're staying up really late at night, whatever.
They're eating a ton, sleeping a ton.
Right, but they're still growing, right? And there is a little bit there of that autonomy piece where you're trying to navigate things you haven't been allowed to do. Like you tell me I have to go to bed at 9 o'clock, but if I go in my room, you don't know if I'm awake or not, right? So you're just experimenting with some of those things as a teenager. What does that look like if I stay up late? What is that? So it was not necessarily laziness. It was just a normal part of growing up. But in my mind, it is very ingrained that taking a nap is not acceptable during the day. You better be grinding and being productive. And opposite to that, the only time that I remember it being okay to sleep or rest is if you were sick. And so what I have seen play out in my life is that I'm not resting until I'm sick. So what is my body doing? Damn it, Amber, you need to rest. You won't rest, you won't rest. Guess what? Now you're sick. Now lay your ass down. And even then, I will try to push against it because growing up, if I was a little bit sick, take a Tylenol, go to school. Keep it moving until you are so sick that like you're got the body aches or you're going to be contagious or you're throwing up or something like that, and then you get to have that rest. And if I'm being honest, there are times where I'm like, I am so tired, and I will immediately shift to almost hope that I wake up sick tomorrow so I can take a sick day.
Wow. You've said a lot there that has so many things swirling in my mind. I feel like my brain just exploded when you talked about how you wonder if your body gets you sick, so you finally slow the fuck down. I've been sick nonstop these last probably 2 months after what was a fall that was way, way, way too busy for any human to manage. And me just consistently grinding through, pushing through, not listening, continuing to fulfill all of the obligations that I had to. And so that one makes me really think. I feel like I had a really similar family story about rest, about particularly resting during the day. I feel like it was admissible in my family to wind down at the end of the night, you know, like maybe read a book, watch a show, but really from like wake up, and God knows you were lazy if you slept in too late.
Yes.
From wake up until when all the dishes were clean from dinner, there was really not a lot of space for resting. And I think it's because my parents worked really hard, their parents worked really hard. That was just kind of the story. And both my grandparents and my parents came from pretty humble beginnings, right? And worked really hard for what they had and grinded and did what they needed to do. But that was just the story in my family, that we are all going to work hard. We are all going to be successful. We are all going to end up somewhere better than where we started. And you cannot do that if you're resting in the middle of the day. And to me, it's kind of like you talk about like a deep embedded story. I was thinking when you said that, it reminds me of when I talk about on here about worthiness and being lovable and things like that. I can say in my head, Jill, you are worthy. Jill, you are lovable. Jill, you deserve rest. I can say that, and cognitively I know it. I know it to be true for a myriad of reasons, but that is a story that has yet to become true in my gut.
Yes.
It's my head fighting with my shamey, swirly insides at that point. And sometimes I'll let my head win out and I'll be like, you don't have a ton of stuff scheduled on this weekend day or this evening. And I will do a resting activity. I will read. I will watch a show. I will knit, do something that feels like rest. But there is always a piece of me that is uncomfortable because I'm wondering, what could I be doing instead?
Right. And the not good enough piece for the rest really resonates, because if rest equals laziness and success equals grind, I don't see myself as successful unless I'm grinding. Therefore, success does not equal rest.
Correct.
Right? So I'm not good enough to have the rest until I have the success, but I can't have the success and the rest.
Exactly. Success, especially when you are a perfectionist and a striver and all of the things that I am, you never get to success because you never let yourself really experience it. As I was telling Amber, almost in the same vein of like observing rest. I cannot rest. It is physically impossible for me to rest if my house is dirty. And if there are things on my to-do list. I see other people around me and they can be like, oh yeah, there's dishes in the sink, or have this work stuff. It's not due tomorrow, but it's due the day after. But for now, I'm gonna read a book. I can't relate to that at all. Because if there are dishes in the sink, if there is laundry that needs to be done, if shit is not picked up, if I have a deadline, I would say anytime within the next 5 to 7 days, there's no resting for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll grind and check all those check boxes to create a space for rest, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that piece I can do now. I can say I've done enough today. The house doesn't really need to be clean. I've picked up enough things. If it's not a deadline right now, tonight, I'm going to keep it moving. I can pick this up tomorrow. I do okay getting up early in the morning and doing restful activities like meditating and carb pull and journaling and stuff. But I've even, just as we were talking, I've even turned that into something that's productive because I post on it. Almost sometimes when I'm meditating meditating and channeling, I'm doing it for myself, but then I'm also thinking about doing it for the collective. And so that right there, like, it's like it's not productive if it's just for me, right? But it is part of my routine. What I find hard at night, I'm going to get up early in the morning because I like that meditative time. My early morning, having that morning routine is important to me. And so I'm not going to really let that go away for very much. So what happens is at night, I'm going to end up staying up later than I should and not getting the rest I need. What keeps me up later at night isn't tasks. It is that my partner is awake and I feel bad going to bed and not spending that time. Even though every day he's like, if you are tired, go to bed. Because he takes his alone time at night. The same time that I take in the morning while he's still asleep, he takes that at night. But I feel guilty about it. And so that guilt and shame about not being productive in that relationship during that time is what keeps me awake.
Interesting. That's
and not even awake, because I'll go to sleep on the couch, but I won't go get in the bed.
But you won't get in the bed. And
get real sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely done that. For me, I think because I'm so wild about not resting during the normal day, right? During the wake up to post-dinner activity, the moment the clock strikes 8 o'clock, which for some reason in my head is an arbitrary time that it is okay to be done for the day, I like swan dive into the bed. The moment that it feels socially acceptable for me, which probably most people are like, Jill, 8 p.m. is not a socially acceptable time.
It absolutely is.
For an adult to go to bed, I will take it. Because for some reason, reading, scrolling on my phone, watching a show after 8, I don't have a problem with. But God forbid I take a break after work and do that so that perhaps I could spend some quality time with my partner or stay out late with friends or something like that. I can't do it. Because if it is like between the hours of 7 and 7, the guilt and shame I feel for resting is unreal. We've talked so far about family of origin. I think a lot of when people struggle with this, I imagine a lot of it comes from family of origin. But I think there is a hustle and grind culture. And then it's been weird because I feel like recently there's been like countercultural movement to that, right? Like the anti-hustle, anti-grind. But that almost is somewhat pathologic as well, right? Because there's still the need to post about how you're not grinding or explain that you're not grinding or be like, this is why I'm not grinding because I don't believe in grinding. But it's almost like you're doing like other weird grind, the hobby grind. Look how much I'm reading. Look how much I'm rest. It's like no matter what we do here in America, we can never escape the capitalist more vibe of it, right? And so I do think there's a lot culturally that like swirls around us that keeps us from resting as well.
Right. That's funny around that. I've noticed that too, where it's, it was grind culture and then it was don't, but in the don't, you better pick up a lot of things that you're doing for yourself, for self-care.
Your self-care better be incredible. I mean, these girls, let's talk about these girls that do the skincare for 30 minutes a day. Do you ever watch those reels or the TikToks?
No.
They're like, it's time for skincare. And their skincare regimen, it has to be 40 minutes long.
Which is wild.
And they're like, and I don't grind. And I'm like, dude, you
on your face.
You're grinding on your face right now. Like, this shit's crazy. But yeah, like you said, like the self-care has become a grind. There's like a self-care grind. And I don't know, maybe a self-care grind is better than a work grind.
Maybe, but
maybe in the hierarchy of grinding,
But I think that's an important thing to talk about because we talk about self-care a lot. And when self-care becomes the grind, is it really still self-care? Is it really still something that's filling you up, or is it an obligation? And we talk about that in our self-care training a lot, about how we check in to make sure that this isn't becoming more of a task or a checklist thing or an obligation that really isn't serving us anymore, and how to change that, how to look at things differently. Either say, I am going to still do this thing because I know it's maybe good for my health, but I'm not really going to sit here and pretend like it is self-care in the same way that I thought it was before. So it's really your mindset around it. That's an important thing to always think about when we're doing self-care, because maybe some people really enjoy a 40-minute skincare. Maybe that feels so good. It doesn't to me.
That's true. I mean, that feels like a lot more work to me.
I'm rubbing down my face with some castor oil and going to bed.
Right, just like splash some water on that. And I think because of the prevalence of social media in general, I think there's a lot of things that have been prescribed to us. This is self-care.
Right.
And when I think about the most profound, quote-unquote, self-care in my life, it has been more around mind shift changes and boundaries that I've set. And yeah, certainly there are some things that I know will make me feel good, right? If I have descended into a place of positive insanity, I know that a hot shower can typically at least bring me back somewhere close to baseline. There are certain tasks and routines that I know will benefit me, but so much of taking care of myself is more around like how I think about things, how I approach relationships, that kind of stuff.
It's that inner work. The self-care is really the inner work. The things that we choose to do as self-care are what shine the light on the inner work that needs to be done. So if I'm like, oh, I want a self-care routine, okay? And I choose some things that I see other people doing. I'm like, a nap every day is self-care, a skincare routine is self-care, whatever. So we start doing that. And one of two things is going to happen. It's going to feel really good and you're like, I love this self-care routine. It really is changing the way that I look at the day. I've got things that I'm looking forward to. Great. Or we're going to start doing it and be like, all right, other people say this is good, but I don't fucking like it.
Right.
And why? That gives us the opportunity to ask why. And it may just be something that you just don't like, that is not something that's important to you at all. It may be that you go back to your tween self and say, oh, this feels bad to me because I was told that I didn't deserve rest.
Right.
So that's where you can dig in a little bit and say, oh, okay, that's where that came from. Is that true? Do I keep doing this task and remembering that it's okay for me to do it so that I get that inner work, so I start to build those good habits for myself and this feels less sticky to me in the long run. So I don't think the self-care is always just about the task that we choose to do. It's more about how the task makes you feel and what you're willing to look at that point in time. A lot of people look at self-care as just tasks. I went to the gym, I got a massage, I got my nails done, and that's fine, right? Because that can bring some joy and happiness to your life, but the long-term joy and happiness is when you're able to look at that and decide why.
Why? And I think when you really are in a space where you're like listening to your body, one thing that I have gotten better at that I would say is like a decent self-care practice is, and being honest, once the tasks are completed, the house is clean, right? And perhaps I have an hour or two. I used to think to myself, because we talk about this in our self-care training too, here are some healthy things I can do to take care of myself, right? I don't want to just numb out and watch a show that I've watched before. I don't just want to take myself out to get a Dairy Queen Blizzard. I think, because I also have this swirling in my head, right? Of good self-care and numbing behaviors. But one thing I've gotten better at is if I do have some space and time, and if I have checked in and clocked that I am feeling burnt out and stressed and overwhelmed, I will essentially ask my body, like almost in this weird internal dialogue way, what do you want? What do you want to do? Do you want to eat some shitty food? Do you want to lay in your bed and watch shows? Do you want to read a book? Do you want to take a walk? Do you want to call somebody? Or do you want to go out and do something? And listening to myself and not making a value judgment on what I want to do. Because I think there are certain phases, at least for me, of burnout where there's some self-care activities that I do not have the energy to engage in.
Right.
Reading is one of them. I love to read. I'm obsessed with reading. I have been so stressed the last couple months. I couldn't get there. I couldn't read a new book. When I had time to rest, or when I was letting myself rest, rather, is how I should phrase that, I can only watch murder. That is all I can do. That is all I have in me. Like, I don't even know that I can start a new show. That feels too emotionally taxing. And I think a couple years ago, I would have been like, damn it, Jill, like, you're just numbing yourself. You're not even doing something healthy. But now just even taking that value judgment away allows me to rest.
Right.
a bit, which is something that is new for me. And I think we talk a lot about that connection between our mind and our body.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard Jen Hatmaker say one time in a podcast that forever in her life, she just viewed her body as an unfortunate container for her brain. Doesn't that resonate? I don't know. It resonated with me.
Yes.
I'm like, look at this strange Tupperware that houses my brain and my soul.
This thing that needs to be fixed.
It's a lot. There's a lot going on here, and it's not my favorite
good fixer-upper. It's my good fixer-upper container.
And almost like she didn't view her body as a part of herself, which I think that I often don't do that. The body is something that needs to be managed. Right? It is not me. And I think when we let ourselves listen to our bodies, there's almost like that acknowledgement that this is also me. This body is a part of me.
Yeah.
This body is not something that my mind was put in charge of.
Right.
To manage, manipulate, and control. I need to listen. If I feel tired, there's probably a fucking reason. If my head hurts, there's probably a reason there too. If the thought of getting up out of this bed is so physically painful, perhaps I should evaluate that.
Right.
As opposed to being like, shut up, body, and get to work.
How dare you forsake me?
We had a lot on the to-do list today, and you are not following my plans. It's like, no, your body is a part of you.
Right.
And if it feels tired, then you should probably rest.
Yeah. Or your body will eventually, it will shut down.
Exactly like you said at the very beginning. And what a reminder. Like anything we talk about in life, Amber, you always say, if you ignore the devil card in tarot, the tower is coming, right? If your body is telling you it's time for a change, that devil card, and you say, shut up, it's all going to fall the fuck apart. And for me, for someone who loves control, there's a compelling argument to say, listen to your body now so it doesn't fail you when something really important's going on.
Right.
But when we think about rest, I do think we have to talk about that integration of all of us.
And I also think too, I mean, we're talking about your body working or failing, and I think that your body, there is no good or bad to that. It is just a clue. It is a clue to what is happening. Your body is not necessarily failing you. It's not causing you this distress. It is shining a light to be like, hello, you've been ignoring me. I need you to pay attention over here. If you still want this meat suit for your soul to be in this lifetime, you're going to need to pay attention over here. Right? I can only do so much.
Right, exactly. And to understand that that's not just your body, that is still a part of you.
Right.
You know, when you do therapy work and clinical work and think about groundedness and all, you know, you have to talk about body work, right? And getting back into your body and listening to your body. And I think that's a huge piece of rest because we just treat our bodies like a shitty old car. It's rattling, it's making all of this noise, and we're like, we gotta get to the next destination, you know, without eventually this shit is gonna blow.
Yeah. I'll take you to the shop in a little bit. Just hold it together.
I don't have the money right now. No money to rest, to go to the shop. Yeah. So I do think that is a huge piece of it as well. So being someone that now rests sometimes, is that how you would describe yourself?
I would say yes.
Being someone who has now learned how to rest a bit, what would be your advice to people? What would be your advice to people, and by people I mean me, where I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed, have been consistently kind of sick and under the weather, struggle to get out of bed each morning because there's this overwhelming feeling of exhaustion, but you feel like you have a million things on your to-do list. How do you rest?
You have to acknowledge the fact that your mind is running the show. Right? We're creating problems that may or may not be as severe as what we are thinking that they are. So going back to that, are you creating your own misery by elevating some of these problems further than what they actually are? But also acknowledging that I'm having a feeling about this. So I think that practically looking at what do you have to do? Where are the things that you feel like need to be done? And that's going to be different for everyone. So those could be work tasks, those could be personal tasks, those could be cleaning the house, whatever the case may be. And then saying, realistically, what do I have the energy for today? And choose those things to do and say these things I need to move to a different day. I think getting used to not doing everything every day is helpful on the journey to start releasing some of those things and saying, I can go to bed if there are dishes in the sink Because guess what? I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'll be able to do those dishes then. And if I don't wake up tomorrow, who the hell cares if there were dishes in the sink?
Right.
Right? So wrapping your head around those pieces and saying, because we want to, on some level, as we're working through this, appease the mind, right? Because otherwise, it's going to keep swirling for us. Like, it's not going to be an on and off switch here. So coming up with, let me just choose 3 things that actually need to be done today. And then let me do those things. And if you're sick, if you wake up in the morning and you're like, I hurt all over, I am sick. Well, maybe I choose 2 things to do today. And one of those things is I'm going to stay in this bed till 11 o'clock, till noon, right? Give myself a little extra rest, see if I feel better. So for me, sometimes I will wake up in the morning, I don't feel great, but I know that I'm not completely sick. Can't get up out of the bed. And instead of, let me just push through this, I will try to push my day back a little bit and give myself some time in the morning to recover, right?
Yes.
And sometimes that means I need to sleep longer depending on how I feel. I know my body well enough now to know, does this require rest? Am I very congested and this requires me to get up and move around a little bit before I can start my day to kind of break some of this up? And I try to make sure I'm intentional about that, because I know that if I do that, if I do just a little bit,
right,
I could probably stave some of this off. I can probably get my body back into alignment, opposed to what I used to do was get up, take some over-the-counter something, keep it moving, and then 3 days later, I'm completely
laid out,
down for the count, 4 days.
Right.
And here was the turning point for me. What would often happen is during the work week, I would push, right? Because I'm supposed to be at work during the work week. I pushed so hard during the work week that when the weekend came, I was sick and laid up all weekend. Well, that's my time off. And I don't want to spend my time off sick.
No, I used to always joke and say, oh my gosh, I only ever get sick on 3-day weekends. And it's like, no, Jill, you only ever got sick on 3-day weekends because that's the only time that you allowed your body to get sick. There is a connection, right, between the mind and the body. And that's a huge thing. And I think what you're talking about, the compromise, is huge, especially for those who perhaps are a bit, neurotic about the resting in a way that I am. And there's 2 things that I always will ask myself when I am like deep in the mind swirl of, I can never rest again. I have so much to do. It will never all be done. I laugh in the face of resting, right? The 2 things I will typically tell myself or ask myself. 1, in 3 weeks, am I going to remember how busy I am? In 3 weeks, is me not catching up on all my emails today or doing X, Y, and Z tasks on my to-do list really going to affect me? Meaning, are these crises and these tasks and these not done to-dos so dire that this is going to throw my ass off for months to come? And every once in a while, I'm like, I do need to do this or else this will fuck me over, right? A couple weeks from now. But 99 times out of 100, the answer is no.
Right.
The answer is I know now from experience that 3 weeks from now, I will have gotten to the bottom of my email. I will have answered the texts that need to be answered. I will have done the tasks that need to be done. And quite frankly, I will not even remember this panicked internal dialogue that I'm having, because it's just not that far out of the ordinary of a normal busy day in my life.
Right.
The other thing I will ask myself, particularly if I am going to bed half dead or I'm waking up feeling really exhausted, is I will look at my calendar, and this might sound really dark and crazy, but I will ask myself, if someone in my family had died last night, what are the things on my calendar today that I would absolutely have to do? Because I don't know about you guys, but if I have a cold, I'm like, well, I can't possibly cancel anything. Everything I have today is so important. And I would probably even feel bad for myself. Why would I have to get sick this week when I have so many important things on the calendar, right? But I have had times in my life where loved ones have died. And I cancel shit without thinking twice. Without even thinking about it.
Yeah, because at that point, you deserve to cancel it because of that thing.
Because of some horrific thing that has
Everybody says that is an acceptable reason not to come to work.
But conversely, when I am providing therapy to myself, I say, if all those things could be canceled in the event of an emergency, right? In the event of a death in the family, And the world kept spinning and the office kept running. And everybody's like, Jill is still a thoughtful and supportive coworker and boss, then surely they can be canceled today.
Right.
Without the world ceasing to spin on its axis.
Right.
So those are like my 2 mind tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I use them as often as I should? Probably not. But that is something that, as I have carried on my healing journey, that have made some of that creating the ability to rest, what some might call work-life balance, a bit easier for me.
Yeah. I think the virtual meetings now make rest so much harder from work because before there was a barrier, right? I'm really sick. I don't want to infect people at work, so I'm not going to go in. Right? And then there was nothing else you could do. You could just maybe do some emails. If you had paperwork at home, you could get caught up on administrative tasks. You might be able to talk to somebody on the phone. But you're not going to attend any of those meetings because you aren't there. And now everything is virtual. So my sick ass can be at home on a virtual meeting in a heartbeat with my camera off, looking like a train wreck with a fever, you know?
Absolutely. Well, and before COVID, I would argue in a lot of spaces, it wasn't super acceptable to work from home. Every once in a while, I can picture myself pre-2020, I wouldn't even bring my laptop home most days. You know, or if I did, it's because maybe I was reporting to a different location the next day and I just needed it logistically. But yeah, pre-2020, this is like a whole nother can of worms that we probably don't have time to get into. There were some true barriers. If you called in sick, nobody was expecting you to do anything. Right? And we even had mechanisms in place. If so-and-so is sick, it's going to be my job, call their clients, reschedule their stuff. Whereas now, like you said, that barrier is so blurry.
Yes.
It's like, well, she's sick, but she can still run the meeting virtually. You know, she's sick, but I can still send her an email. That's a really, because I thought you were going to say, truly when you started talking, I thought you were going to say virtual meetings make it easier. Because I thought you were going to say something to the effect of, which is just so my own pathological thinking of like, you could always switch an in-person meeting to a virtual meeting, right? So in theory, you could rest, quote unquote, at home while doing a virtual.
But you're not resting at home.
You're not resting. No.
You're not resting at home. If you're thinking that staying home and doing things virtually is rest, you're missing the point. You know, it is just as stressful. Rest is physical and emotional
and
mental rest. I can't do that if I'm in a meeting. I'm still having to think through things. And quite frankly, I know when I've been really sick and I've decided, okay, well, I'll just do these meetings because these are important and I better be there. I feel like stuff's going to go awry if I'm not there, as if I'm that important, right? I've like created my own little story about my importance in the world. I get on the meetings and it's like I'm spouting off fever dreams to you anyway. Because I'm so sick.
Dude, I have gone back and looked at emails that I have sent when I was working from home because I was sick, and they are like positively deranged. Yeah, so I think that's the other thing too, and I think that is another huge, what we would call a thought distortion, right? In the field. This belief that your work world cannot function without you.
Yeah.
Stop
No,
it.
It can.
Stop.
It can. 100%.
Get over yourself.
100%.
Get over yourself. And when I say get over yourself, I'm talking to me because I have woken up, I don't know, probably 350 times in my life and been like, well, God knows they can't do it without me.
Right.
Let me go in and just infect everyone and rain terror, to your point, spew madness.
Yeah.
And
a little bit of a leadership tip there is if you don't let other people do things that they can do and you're always coming in to save the day when you're sick, when you need to rest, when you're on vacation, you're not going to be growing a team.
No.
You're going to have a team that has the same skill level that they had when you hired them. You're constantly going to be, God, why am I always I feel so stressed? Why am I always having to run around and put out all these fires? It's because you won't let anybody else put out the fire. You won't let anybody else use those skills, cultivate those skills so that you can have a robust team and trust that they're going to be able to carry out tasks that they should be able to carry out.
We need to talk about, this needs to be our next podcast, because in my supervision group this past week, we talked about this for a long time, probably 30 or 40 minutes, about how we as leaders, and I think you could translate this to leaders at work, even leaders with a friend or social group, at home with your children or your partner. If we are so concerned all the time with making sure that nobody else gets a hitch in their giddy up, nobody has to experience discomfort. Nobody has, like, if there's a crisis, that's not in their job description. I'm the boss. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Then all you're doing truly is immobilizing people, right? You're not letting people rise to their potential. You're not creating a space that fosters growth or creativity or anything at all. What you're doing is being codependent, number one.
Yeah.
And probably to serve your own unresolved issues.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, when you do inevitably have to leave, when you get a new job, when you are just truly incapacitated, when you have the death in the family, things might go to shit. And the only reason they go to shit is exactly to your point, is because you never gave anybody the opportunity to problem solve through some of the things that arise that are normal issues that arise on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that. And that's just another thing, perhaps to bring it full circle here, is our inability or unwillingness to rest not only affects us, it affects the people around us.
Yeah.
And
we're modeling that for other people in our lives, whether it is professionally or personally. We just same way that it was modeled for me as a child, that, you know, the grind is a success, right? If I continue that pattern, I'm modeling that for other people. And I've even seen this, I guess, to take a step back. I've seen this where it's lip service that yes, we do have good work-life balance, or we do take care of ourselves, but my actions don't reflect that.
We've talked about this before, for sure. And I say I've seen it, and I think I've done it.
Oh, yes, for
I've been
sure.
like, oh my gosh, if you need, take your time. If you're sick, I don't want you here. But anybody who has any amount of discernment can see the fucking panic in my eyes. What are we going to do if you're not here? Like the resignation of, oh my God, now I got to do your fucking job and on top of my job. Or they say that to all of them. And maybe I even mask my panic well. Or maybe I am even in a space where I'm like, yeah, take your time. We'll be fine.
Right.
But then they never see me take my time.
Yeah.
And they see me hacking up a lung, you know, wandering around Typhoid Mary style, you know, and they think, well, if Jill comes to work like this, I should come to work like this.
And for me, in doing leadership work, I think a sign that you are not stepping on the toes of the people that you supervise and not letting them grow is that if one day you have to be out and it's unexpected, because we can talk about when we plan for it, right? Because we set up all the guardrails, we do all the work on the front end, we come back and, you know, nobody has to do my job. I'll come back and do it, right? But truly, I thought I was going to be here this day and I am not. If your team can function for the day without you there and not have to go and call you or call another leader or anything like that for anything that they wouldn't normally have to, then I would say that is a success.
For sure.
Right? It doesn't mean that they don't need you. It doesn't mean that if you were gone for 2 weeks that things wouldn't start kind of falling apart. But if for one day they can't handle it,
that's a problem.
That's a problem. That means we don't have a skill level yet.
Right.
And either they've not developed it yet or we've not allowed it.
One or the other. And both of those things, quite frankly, as a leader are kind of your fault because you've either not given the space for it to develop or you're not allowing it.
Right. I do think there are times where you have new employees and they don't have the skill level yet and you're working on it and they may need some assistance, and that's not really your fault. You're providing that support and you're giving the guidance. If you don't know that you're providing the guidance or you're providing the constructive criticism for what's not being done, then that's a place where you need to be looking at.
Be thoughtful. We've digressed a little bit into some leadership tips, but I do think I would wager that people who struggle with rest the most probably, one, have a lot of obligations, two, and have at least the feeling or the perception that there's a lot of people or things that rely on them. Right. And it's like, how do you, just like how we were talking about how some of the best self-care decisions I've ever made have to do with boundary setting and mindset shifts. Like, how do we almost systemically organize our life in a way that fosters rest or allows for rest? Right. And I think that's definitely something to think about. And I think the conversation about work can be applied to family and partnerships. and all of
Absolutely.
that. So thinking about that critically as well. What is your favorite thing to do to rest? If everything on your to-do list was done and your house is sparkly clean and nobody else is here, what would you do?
I don't know why that's so hard to answer.
I know. I thought you'd have something right away.
There are a couple things that I would do. One thing I do truly enjoy doing, like my meditative practices, and I like doing them for a long time. Like I like to really get in and sit with it. So that might be something I may look at, just pulling cards and just spending a really long time on that. I like to read. Another thing that I like to do that I don't do often is, like, there's certain TV shows that I like to watch that I don't watch with my partner because we both don't enjoy them. Like at night, he's going to watch what he wants to after I go to bed. I'm not going to watch TV in the morning when I get up because I've got other things that I want to do. So sometimes it's things like that. Or like if there's a movie that I've been wanting to watch, you know, just kind of sitting down and doing that. Well, I find when I'm alone in the house, though, I always find fun things to do. I kind of look forward to it. Not that I don't like my partner being here, but when I'm alone, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be alone. So, you know, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this for like extended periods of time because I'm the only one here in the house.
No, that is nice. Yeah, I think I would read for sure. Read not something like self-help. Read a murder mystery or some kind of thriller. I do love a good documentary, particularly if it's about a cult. Like that makes me super. I love a cult documentary. And I like to do creative stuff. Like I knitting stuff, crocheting stuff, coloring books, you know, painting, all of that kind of stuff that I hardly ever let myself do. But yeah, if I truly felt like I could do that, that's what I would do. All right. You want to pull a card for us on rest?
All right. So we're going to pull from the Sacred Cycles Oracle deck. So let's take a deep breath together and set the intention that we will receive exactly what we need from this podcast today in the way of learning about rest for ourselves and in this card pull. That was quick. So this deck is very feminine. This card is the menstruation card. So it's talking about, the sacred cycles are talking about moon cycles, feminine cycles, cycles of life. And so I'm going to get in here and look. And the statement that comes with the menstruation card is, I surrender to my body's sacred wisdom. So and I'm going to kind of read in here what the Oracle deck has to say about this, but I think, that is very spot on to what we are talking about.
I mean, it feels like a mic drop.
I
listen to my body's sacred wisdom. Goodbye, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. So it says the womb's release during menstruation welcomes the bleeding phase of the body's rhythm, which we all know that. This impeccably integrated system of letting go offers the recurring opportunity to assess that which must be left behind. Each time the sacred body chooses to unburden itself of these accumulated layers, it's an invitation to acknowledge the potent mix of grief and relief that arises within this release. Reclaiming this phase through ritual reignites the power and magic that it holds. It is a time to bring awareness to your relationship to grief, relief, release, and surrender. A deep exploration of these concepts holds much wisdom for you at this time.
Well, the cards are always pretty spot on, but that might be the most spot on one we've had in a while. It may be a message to me, I don't know about to you, but perhaps a message to rest a little bit today.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Guided by Third Wheel, the podcast. We would be honored if you would like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, be well.